Hello and welcome to Introduction to Cells. In this lesson, we'll learn about how does material enter and leave a cell. Specifically, what we'll learn is how do materials enter and leave cells, and how does cell size affect the transport of these materials. As always, let's start with some key vocabulary. And the first word is passive transport. Passive transport is the movement of substances through a cell membrane without using the cell's energy. You have diffusion. Diffusion is the movement of substances from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration. Osmosis is the diffusion of water molecules only through a membrane. You also have facilitated diffusion, and this is the process by which molecules pass through a cell membrane, but they use special proteins called transport proteins to get through the cell membrane. Then you have endocytosis, and that is the process during which a cell takes in a substance by surrounding it with the cell membrane. So it basically envelopes the substance to take it inside the cell. Exocytosis is the process during which a cell's vesicles release their contents to the outside of a cell. So let's go ahead and begin your lesson. So remember, one of our vocabulary words was passive transport. And again, this is the movement of substances without using cells' energy. So small molecules such as oxygen and carbon can pass through membranes using passive transport. And it really depends on the amount of substance on each side of the membrane. So you can see here, you've got the purple substance and on the inside and the outside. And you can see it's just kind of coming in here through passive transport inside the cell. Now, what we're talking about here is diffusion, and that is the movement when substances go from a higher concentration to a lower concentration. All right? And so basically, you have here very high concentration, so they're going to move across or through the membrane to the area of lower concentration. Now, once you get equal amounts on each side of the membrane, right? So this, two different sizes equal, we call that equilibrium. So, and that's using basically one substance, so they're all orange right here. Now, if it was two solutes or substances on each side of the membrane, then it could still reach equilibrium by the red ones moving over, until finally it's much more balanced or equal. So diffusion continues, again, until the concentration of the substance is equal on both sides of the membrane. And that, again, is called equilibrium. All right? So, again, here's a bunch of molecules or substance solutes in water passing through the membrane, and they keep passing through, and some pass through this way, until finally everything is nice and equal. Osmosis is diffusion of water molecules only through a membrane. So when you're dealing with water molecules going through a membrane, we call that osmosis. Now you should also remember this word, semi-permeable. Semi-permeable means that things can pass through it. All right? It's not completely blocking it. So semi-permeable cell membranes allow water to pass through them until equilibrium is achieved. So here you have, for example, fresh water and salt water, and how pressure, etc., can do reverse osmosis or simply the passing through of the membrane. The fresh water goes into the salt water, or you provide pressure and it pushes into the fresh water. Now, facilitated diffusion means that it's being helped. All right? To facilitate means to help. So facilitated diffusion occurs when molecules pass through that same membrane, but they use proteins called transport proteins. All right? So you have here the transport protein that takes these little substances and basically almost like swallows them and then spits them out on the other side inside the cell. Now, channel proteins are transport proteins, all right? And that's what this is. This is a channel protein. So it swallows up those little proteins or substances, and it just spits it out. Now, carrier proteins are transport proteins that carry really big molecules. So it all depends on how big the molecule is and where it's located inside the cell. Channel proteins are basically about pores through the cell membranes. And carrier proteins are transport proteins that basically carry the molecules through the cell membrane. All right? So here you have some examples. All right? You have a channel protein and carrier proteins. So there's a nice little pore that's open up that they can come on in. And in this one, the substances come in and it closes and then opens. And then if it wants to go out, it closes and opens. So that's a carrier protein. All right, active transport. Active transport is using the cell's energy to move substances. All right? Substances moved by active transport can move from areas of lower concentration to areas of higher concentration. So it doesn't worry about diffusion because it's using that energy to push it. Cells can take in needed nutrients from the environment through carrier proteins, but they have to use active transport. They have to use some sort of energy. Now, endocytosis is the process during which a cell takes a substance by surrounding it with a cell membrane. Right? So, endocytosis is where something is surrounded, right? So here's the substance and it hits the cell membrane, and the cell membrane kind of goes, and captures the substance, and then the cell membrane wraps around the substance, right? And then detaches to the inside of the cell. Now, exocytosis is going the opposite way. It's going from inside the cell to outside the cell. So again, endocytosis is going in, exocytosis is going out. For the same thing, it has this vesicle membrane surrounding the contents, right? And then it bumps up against the cell wall, and then it kind of goes, merges with the cell wall, and then it just opens up, and everything is now outside the cell. So again, endocytosis is going in the cell, exocytosis is going out of the cell. Endo, in, and exo, exit. So how do materials enter and leave cells? That's your key concept, Trey. Well, they can do it by either passive transport, diffusion, osmosis in the case of water, or active transport. So you have passive transport, active transport, diffusion, or osmosis. Those are the ways that materials can enter and leave a cell. So the area of a cell membrane must be large compared to its volume, so substances can move in and out. Right? The area of a cell membrane is the cell's surface. So if you look here, the volume is the amount of space inside the cell, right? So this is the volume. And the cell membrane is the surface area, right there. So those are all the surface area of a cell membrane. So the area of the cell must be much larger compared to its volume, what's on the inside. So, how does cell size affect the transport of materials? The area of a cell membrane must be large compared to its volume, so substances can move in and out. So you have to have that large membrane. So in summary, remember that small molecules can move from areas of higher concentration to lower concentration by a process called diffusion. In facilitated diffusion, protein transports large molecules through the cell. And some molecules move from areas of lower concentration to higher concentration through active transport, which also requires energy. That's your lesson on how do materials enter and leave cells, and I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you at the next lesson.